Here's Ben Shapiro to be wrong about the Biden administration.
Meanwhile, in policy terms, remember that time that Joe Biden said he was going to be a moderate? Yeah, that was funny. That's fine. Some of us warned you that was not going to happen.
He seems pretty moderate to me, too moderate for my taste, in fact, but I'm sure Ben doesn't see it that way because to him, anyone even slightly to the left of Mitt Romney is a radical Bolshevik.
Some of us suggested to the so-called never Trump Republicans that you guys who keep saying Joe Biden is going to be a moderate uniter, nope, no, he's not. He is simply a facade for the radical left.
I wish. The guy said that even if Congress passed a Medicare for All bill, he would veto it. That doesn't sound like something someone who's merely a facade for the radical left would do.
And what has happened? He is a facade for the radical left. All his administration has done so far is issue more executive orders in the first week of any term than any president in American history.
The bit about the executive orders is fake outrage. Trump signed more executive orders in his first few hundred days than any president since Lyndon Johnson. It's not as though the more executive orders you sign, the more radical left you are. And since a lot of bad instructions were instituted by Trump with executive orders, it is entirely appropriate to correct them via executive orders.
And those executive orders are filled with things like boys should race in girls' sports.
Actually, it says that all boys should be allowed to race in boys' sports, regardless of whether they are cisgender or transgender. It seems that it is actually Ben who believes that some boys should be forced to race in girls' sports. See this trans boy wrestling a girl? He's doing that because he was told that if he wants to wrestle, he has to wrestle with the girls, even though he wants to wrestle with the boys. This is what Ben thinks is right and proper. That is, unless he thinks all transmasculine people who've had hormone therapy ought to be banned from sports altogether, which wouldn't surprise me.
And also, we should make sure that racial equity is the basis of all of our policies, meaning racial favoritism based on supposed victimized status by group.
The word supposed is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. He doesn't want any of the lasting damage that has been done to communities on the basis of their race by explicitly racist policies for the last few hundred years to be repaired if it means that white people have to lift a finger or spend a cent to repair it.
So yeah, things are going great. Also, they're going to ram through a $1.9 trillion package that is unnecessary.
Sure, if by ram through you mean negotiate ad nauseum while people are starving and facing eviction, even though the Democrats are the majority party and don't have to.
It is not necessary. What we need right now is temporary help for people who are in need. We don't need more aid that is just thrown out the window to people who have jobs, who are currently working.
First of all, people who are currently working can't always pay all of their bills. And secondly, even if they can, that's not the only advantage of a stimulus. The point of a stimulus is to stimulate demand in the economy to incentivize businesses to expand. That's why it's called a stimulus.
We also don't need people to be paid more than they were making when they were actually working.
We do if we want to increase demand in the economy.
That is not something that we require right now. And yet that is exactly what is being proposed by Joe Biden. He's also proposing a raise to $15 minimum wage, which makes no sense federally because it turns out the states have widely variant styles of living. $15 goes a long way in Mississippi. It doesn't go halfway in New York.
Well, that's not due to styles of living. It's due to cost of living. It's not like New Yorkers pay higher rent because it's trendy.
The idea of a federal minimum wage is idiocy on its face, especially when it's raised to some exorbitant level that is greater than like 1/3 of all the wage earners in a particular state.
It doesn't look like the $15 minimum wage is even going to pass, and Biden doesn't seem too keen on fighting very hard for it, which seems odd for someone who's supposedly a facade for the radical left. And even though there are Republicans who seem pleased with Biden's bipartisanship, Ben doesn't want to hear it.
I'm glad that Susan Collins is feeling super flattered by spending time with Joe Biden. I mean, like, that's the best. It's when they spend time and they play like D&D, and it's just fantastic, right? They sit there, they play board games, they have a cup of tea.
Sounds like Ben isn't really all that interested in unity.
Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are just going to ram through this bill. They're just going to ram it through.
By ram it through, Ben means that they're not going to allow the party that lost the election to undemocratically filibuster it.
And it's like The Simpsons. Set that clock back to 0. Days since we broke bipartisanship. Right? Set that clock back to 0. It was at like not even a day, and setting it back to 0 right now. The White House put a statement also. They said that the president and vice president had a substantive and productive discussion with Republican senators this evening at the White House. The group shared a desire to get help to the American people who are suffering through the worst health and economic crisis in a generation. While there were areas of agreement, the president also reiterated his view that Congress must respond boldly and urgently. Whenever Congress says bold and urgent, hold on to your wallet, man. Whenever a politician says bold and urgent, what they mean is we are going to spend more money than has ever been created by God or man.
Which you seem perfectly fine with when it's spent on invading a country whose oil you want to control. Also keep in mind that this $1.9 trillion package is no bigger than the $2 trillion package Trump signed in March of 2020. You'd think that a facade for the radical left would spend more money than the Republican president did.
They noted many areas in which the Republican senator's proposal does not address the problems. Biden reiterated, while he is hopeful that the rescue plan can pass with bipartisan support, a reconciliation package is a path to achieve that end. The president also made clear that the American Rescue Plan was carefully designed to meet the stakes of the moment. Any changes in it cannot leave the nation short of its pressing needs. So in other words, thanks so much for stopping by. It's been fun. Also, we're going to completely ignore everything you have to say. Captain Unity, unitying it up over there. I mean, like super lots of unity happening inside the Democratic Party. So here's what we've gotten in the age of unity, the new golden era so far. We have gotten, if you don't vote to convict Trump in the impeachment trial, this means that you are in league with the January 6th rioters.
Well, keep in mind that the vote to impeach was bipartisan in both the House and the Senate. It was the most bipartisan impeachment vote in American history. So I guess in a sense, Trump is a greater unifier than Biden in that Trump managed to unify members of both parties against himself.
That if you believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a nut job and a crazy person, but also you can't expel her from Congress for stuff that she said before the election, that's why we have an election process in the United States, that if you actually believe that, you can remove her from committees and stuff, that makes you the party of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
If you agree that she's a nut job and a crazy person, why would you want to keep her on committees when you have the ability to remove her from them? If you defend keeping her on committees from which she can be easily and constitutionally removed, I don't see why it's so unreasonable to interpret that as a tacit endorsement of the value of her contribution to those committees. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.